Hey everyone, this is Domina Mara, and since I had so much fun editing the Europe tour that I did last year in 2019, I thought I would do my East Coast tour starting in New York, then heading to Boston, and ending with Philadelphia. I took a red-eye and landed in New York City at dawn, and then went to brunch at the House of Small Wonders with a roommate from university. On the way back into the city, I heard an instrument that I've never seen before, and it was so mesmerizing. I kind of took it easy the rest of the day, and then that evening I was going to meet Lady Victoria to go see Stormy Daniels' comedy show. She had an extra ticket and graciously invited me as she knew I was visiting town. The next morning it was brunch in Brooklyn again at the Rabbit Hole. Back to Manhattan, I took a stroll through Chelsea Market. And then it was time to board a sailboat, headed towards the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island.
That was some years later, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for London.
The boat ride was about 90 minutes with red and white wine or seltzer water provided. I was actually able to go up to the crown of the Statue of Liberty when I was younger, but this is the closest that I've ever gotten in my adult life. After the boat tour, I decided to visit the High Line, which was added a few years ago. When I left New York City at that time, it wasn't complete. So this time, I got to experience it at its fullest. I went back to my hotel for a quick change, and I saw the Museum of Sex on maps, so I decided to check it out. Luckily, I was able to grab tickets that day as it was packed. If you guys haven't been, it's an amazing, very colorful, historical museum, beginning from vintage times through cabaret dioramas to the era of punk rock, and finally, the 2000s. There are a bunch of really awesome neon lights and games that you could experience like an arcade, and I thought the interactivity was brilliant.
Please select your union. Press 1 for straight marriage. Press 2 to renew your vows. Press 3 for gay or lesbian. Press 4 for best friends forever. Press 1 for I do. Press 2 to do you take this woman to be your... You have exchanged these rings as a pledge of your vows made together. Congratulations, you may now kiss. Please take your certificate of union, and thank you for choosing us.
I'll clear downstairs. Perfect, and you are all good to go. Have a great night.
Thank you, you as well.
Oh, okay.
Over here. Okay.
After the museum, I went back to Brooklyn for a cabaret show that was mixed with a bunch of different art styles, and the theme was the Queen of Hearts. I had VIP seats with popcorn, red absinthe, and chocolate bonbons. Everyone was super talented, the costumes were gorgeous, and the venue was right around the corner from the House of Yes, which I have still yet to attend. Thank you to Company 14 for a wonderful time. I was a little hungry after the show, so I got a couple slices at Joe's Pizza, and then it was back to my hotel through Times Square. The next day I went to Bia for brunch and I ordered a lot, which was okay since I was going to be walking for most of the day, and I washed everything down with a glass of sangria. I walked to Juilliard School, and this is where I saw the ballet A Midsummer Night's Dream years ago when I was still in university, and they've definitely upgraded the campus. I stopped by the Natural History Museum just to take a look at the inside, as this is my favorite, but I didn't have the time to go explore around inside it. On the maps, I noticed that there was a castle that was now open in Central Park. I had no idea that they had just restored the Belvedere that is now open to the public. Walking back down the streets, I passed by the Lego store and took a stroll inside Grand Central Station. There was a lovely oyster bar that I would have loved to have eaten at if I hadn't been so full. I stopped by the United Nations building, which I actually took a tour of while I was also in school, and then I passed by this building, which was the Ford Foundation, that had this amazing indoor garden inside. And to my surprise, they even had a museum that was open on the mezzanine, featuring futuristic utopian art. I had made reservations to go to Momofuku, and I was able to dine al fresco and watch the sunset, and it made it even more delicious. From dinner, I hit up my old stomping grounds and found a newly designed landscape. And then it was time to hit up the Lower East Side. Many people had recommended Sleep No More, an interactive theater based off of Shakespeare, so I decided to check it out for myself. I spent 4.5 hours until it closed that evening. I think it would be better with a big group of friends, as I only went with one other person. There's so much to do and see, and I'm pretty sure you won't have the same experience twice. I then went to the Slipper Room to check out some raunchier nightlife. And on the way to transport, I passed by this really cool looking whiskey bar, which I need to check out the next time I'm in town. The next morning, I was really craving French, so I had brunch at Marseille. I actually had escargot for breakfast, as well as a croque madame before heading out for the day. The World Trade Center was not yet built when I left New York previously, and so I took a trip down there and found that they had an outdoor market called Smorgasburg like they have in downtown LA, but I didn't get to try any of the food this time. I didn't go up the World Trade Center, but I visited the memorial and everything was silent except for the sound of rushing water. I didn't know that they had something called the Oculus, and it's literally a sculptural mall that has the subway attached to it, and it's very futuristic looking while also depicting some sort of a vertebrae. I took a walk by the port and found this really beautiful carousel that looked like a seashell. And then I stopped by the seaport as it was Oktoberfest and a bar was celebrating with different kinds of beers and ciders. I've only walked the Brooklyn Bridge maybe once or twice, so I figured this would be a good day to do that again. It's a 3-mile walk across, and after making the trek, I decided to visit my favorite chocolate place in Dumbo. I purchased a hot chocolate as well as some goodies for my family at Jacques Torres. I meandered through the marketplace and then stopped by a vista point where you can see both bridges and the Manhattan skyline. As the sun was starting to set, I headed back into the city and got ready for my 2-hour dinner date, followed by a 2-hour session of play. He was super sweet and chose an elegant card to write a really thoughtful and heartfelt note. Dinner was delightful at an Italian restaurant, and play went by very, very quickly. It was a great end to my first leg of my tour. I made it to Boston, and I'll be staying in Cambridge in this really cute space for the next couple of days. After dropping off my luggage, I went to Rosebud to go meet Mistress Jade Desires, and we shared a couple of appetizers as well as some cocktails and got to know each other in person since we previously only knew each other virtually. After that, I retired for the evening, and the next day, I went downtown to explore before meeting with a couple more mistresses for a lunch. I checked out the pier, I saw Paul Revere and his house. Checked out some government buildings, strolled through the park, and then I had 3 sessions that afternoon before I headed out to go see a friend for dinner at Sarma. The next day, I made a day trip to Salem. Yes, I pilgrimaged to go see the witch house, the historic districts. I didn't really go into any of the dungeon museums because they were a little too cheesy for me. I visited 3 cemeteries and walked through them, as well as stopping for pumpkin soft serve ice cream, as I've never had that flavor before. But I ended up heading towards the water and was able to visit the House of Seven Gables. My favorite owner of the House of Seven Gables was a woman and took over her family business, which was unheard of. She didn't want to marry because she would have to relinquish her ownership to her potential husband. So she took on companions and lived her life doing good business and seeing whoever she pleased. I took the train back down to Cambridge, and then it was dinner at Viale, an Italian restaurant, before I tucked in early because I had a flight to catch the next morning. The last and final stop was Philadelphia. I think I've been when I was younger because I remember seeing the Liberty Bell, but that was years ago. I had a whole aisle to myself on the flight over from Boston and checked into a brand new apartment that had a really bold green color wall, as well as incredibly tall ceilings.
Yay, I made it to Philly.
I took transport around Logan Square and then headed to the park where I visited the Fountain of Seahorses. Overlooked the river and saw the Fairmount Waterworks in the distance. And then I went up the stairs to take photos of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. However, the moment I walked in, the security guard said that they were about to close. I said that it wasn't a problem as I just wanted to take a photo being in the space. So he took the photo for me with my phone and then told me that if I came back tomorrow, there is a live jazz band that plays every first Friday of the month and that he would get me in for free. I told him I wasn't sure what my plans were as I was going to be playing during my stay, but I kept it open and thanked him for his kindness. It was still a little light out, so I decided to go toward City Hall, which was huge. I later found out in a tour that one guy had sculpted over 250 statues, I think, just for this building, which is insane. To the left was the Freemasons building, and they were about to close as well. However, the security guard also let me take a couple of pictures before they closed for the day. Philly has a lot of these love sculptures all around in different languages. I remember one of these planted in New York while I was living there, so I took a photo as the sun was setting. The sun was setting fast, and what better way to end the day in Philadelphia with a Philly cheesesteak? The one I chose was D'Alessandro's Steaks. It was a little bit of a trek, but because the reviews were so good, I decided to try it out. There is about a 10 to 15 minute wait to order and another 15 to 20 minutes just to get the Philly cheesesteak to go. I ate it as I ordered an Uber, which took another 15 minutes to arrive, and a 30-minute drive back to my apartment. If traffic wasn't an issue, it might have been worth it, but I was just really glad to be back and go to bed. The next morning, I woke up bright and early since I was still on West Coast time, and today was museum day. I headed towards Logan Square once again and stopped by the Academy of Natural Sciences to take a look on the inside. Then I walked towards the Franklin Institute just to see what that looked like as well. And then I headed towards One Liberty to go all the way up to see the 360 view of the city. and the infamous Ben Franklin, my favorite banknote. I was just in time for a tour, and the guide was super knowledgeable. I think I stayed there for over an hour listening to him talk about history, and while he was narrating, we saw the Coast Guard come up the river as the head of the department was in town for the weekend. The tour guide was actually going to give him an exclusive walk around later that evening. He mentioned at the Macy's store there was a grand organ that played twice a day, once at noon and again in the evening. I rushed over to see if I could catch it walking through the City Hall building this time, and when I got there, I noticed I was 10 minutes late. So I asked the register nearby to see if the organs had played yet, and she said they were late. 15 minutes later, the organist started playing, and I was able to watch it in its glory from one of the higher floors in the department store. I also met a sweet couple from California who were leaving that afternoon and told me about a full orchestra playing for the organ's anniversary. However, I had a session that afternoon and evening and probably wouldn't have made it, but I thanked them for the information and wished them safe travels. Since it was lunchtime, I went to Reading Terminal and decided to try another Philly cheesesteak, cause why stick with just one when you have a whole city ready to feed you? So I got a sandwich from Denick's roast pork in the classic style. I could have gone without the collard greens and added a chipotle mayo sauce, but it was juicy. Benjamin Franklin was a popular guy around these parts, and for good reason. I went back to the Franklin Institute because I wanted to explore all the different things that was associated with him, from inventions to trains, and even an observatory on the rooftop. Next, I visited the Barnes Foundation, and this is a private collector's museum. There was so much art on the walls and in displays that it took a lot of brain power to absorb everything in such a short amount of time. They also requested that I check my coat because I guess it was too long and it may disrupt the people around me or some of the art. I'm not sure. Some guy also saw me setting up to try to take a photo of myself in the room, and he offered to take it for me, but since I already had my phone set up, I told him it was okay. He stuck around to watch me work, and then after asked if I was a YouTuber, which I said yes. Not that I'm a very popular one, but that's what I do anyway. I gave him my channel, and we both exited the premises. Anyway, the building was also really minimalistic with beautiful landscaping. After that, I passed by the Rodin Museum, and I didn't go in this one, but I did take a stroll on the property, and of course took photos of all of his creations sculpted into one, also known as the Gates of Hell. I returned to my apartment for a couple of sessions, and since I had some time afterwards, I actually went over to the Philadelphia Museum of Art and went to look for the guard that I spoke to to see if I could redeem that complimentary entrance. I ended up actually finding him, and he already had the ticket printed in his pocket and said that he was really glad that I came back and to enjoy. I thought it would be a waste not to take a look at the museum, and I ended up spending 4 hours going through every wing and flying through the corridors. And in between, I was able to hear the live band play their awesome jazz. I was able to sit on the steps for a little bit to enjoy their music with 100% attention and to take a break from running around. The doors stay open a little longer on Fridays, especially when they have live music, so this experience was truly a blessing. I just wish I could live in museums. So many gorgeous things! Priceless historical artifacts, famous paintings, thought-provoking sculptures. Art says it all. I stayed there for so long that it was dark when I exited, and I was too tired to go find dinner. Rather, I looked for food and made reservations for the next and final day, but went to bed after that. I don't know what I did for my final day, but half the day was gone before I knew it. I had one last session, and then I headed out to Philadelphia's Magic Gardens. I saw this on the maps, and it had such high reviews that I decided to go and take a look. You're supposed to RSVP online for a specific time frame to prevent overcrowding, and I literally got the last ticket for the day before they closed. This space is indeed magical. In the 60s, Isaiah and Julia moved to South Street, and there was going to be a demolition of the area. And to prevent that from happening, because it was an important historical street for Latin American artists, he decided to transform that space. I also learned that he was extremely depressed for a very long time. And in order to help cope with this, he and his wife started making art out of broken things, such as plates, glass, anything that you can find, even metal like forks, bicycle wheels. And they would make these giant mosaics, literally 2 lots worth of colorful, creative messages and imagery that was inspired from his international travels to Central America, India, Morocco, Iran, China, Indonesia. Art exhibitions around the world like the Ideal Palace in France, the Watts Towers in Los Angeles, and the Rock Garden in India, Las Posas in Mexico were heavily influencing the garden. Being the last of the group was actually ideal because everybody else had left and nobody else could come in. So I stayed there as long as I could to take self-portraits and exchange photo ops with other strangers who had the same sense of wonder while we were all there. Even the bathrooms had unique pottery, and everything in the room was filled. Every crevice, every crack was intentional. I ended the day at Tallulah's Garden, which was a highly rated restaurant, and it was happy hour. And I had actually made reservations the night before, so I was able to get a table. I ordered a pork chop and had a nice Manhattan to kind of treat myself for the completion of the trip. I decided to walk a part of the way back to my apartment, going through Washington Square and Independence Hall, and of course, taking a peek at the Liberty Bell, which is actually lit at nighttime. I had an evening flight that night, and on the way back, rested in bliss as I reflected and recalled all of the things that I did during this time. I want to thank all my subs that I've interacted with on the East Coast, and stay tuned for next week as I visit the Pacific Northwest. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications so that you know when these videos come out and when I live stream next. I've been doing them weekly, religiously. And until next time, stay safe, have fun, and keep it kinky, everyone.